I didn't
Okay, well,
consent to this.
you wait, what?
I didn't consent to be recorded. Excuse me.
Okay, all right. Well, that's been good.
It's been
Keep
good.
your hopes
Thanks.
high, your stress low. No, that's good stuff. No, cool. Well, welcome back to the channel, guys. I know that it's been a second since I did all the other Barbenheimer stuff, but I promised that we were going to be doing this, and I stood by that. And yeah, so today I already did my just like basic spoiler-free thoughts. There's not really that many spoilers. It's kind of like Titanic. We know what happens, but I already did my spoiler-free thoughts on everything and did that little review. So if you haven't seen that, go check that out. But I did promise that we were going to be doing this because it's going to be a lot more contextual insight, a lot more historical insight from somebody who actually lives right in Los Alamos. Say hi to Blaire first of all. This is one of my best friends, Blaire, and she lives there and knows everything about everything.
That's 100% incorrect, but I appreciate I appreciate the support. But hi, everybody. I'm so freaking excited to be on Matt's channel. I love it, and he's like the smartest dude when it comes to
Oh,
movies ever. So like, I was like,
100% incorrect.
I like him to let me do this with him because I was like, Matt, please. I was like, I don't understand Matt.
Yeah, no,
Um,
literally, I think the very first thing I had scheduled for like, okay, I'm going to be doing this in 2023 on the channel was when Oppenheimer comes out. We're going to have to talk about it. And that's funny because that's when I was still like, oh, okay, yeah, it looks pretty good. You know, it's a Christopher Nolan movie and I love them, but the last couple have been kind of, okay. But yeah, now the hype is real for it.
yeah, it's we have so much to talk about.
Yeah. So, in that vein, I guess just overall, I mean, we can go into the details of everything in a sec, but just overall thoughts after seeing the movie.
Well, first off, I think the movie is it's gorgeous, just in a cinematic sense, because it's like it's extremely well filmed, but at the same time, it's not flourished with like what I kind of mean by that is like the Napoleon trailer came on before
Mm,
the movie, and that's like cinematically gorgeous, but it almost has this like color on top of it that makes it like has a more fictional look to it rather than like super just like historic kind of elements. So I think Nolan definitely both kept it very good looking, but very realistic at the same time.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
The cinematography in this movie is just downright insane, and it's like one of those things, like you were saying, it looks gorgeous, and it's I mean, it's Christopher Nolan. It's one of those things that he always does incredibly huge scopes with a lot of these movies, especially things like Interstellar. But with this one, with the whole like sparks, like abstract sparks and flames and things in
yeah,
between shots and scenes, it's one of those things that I was like, all right, like this is such a, I don't want to say pretentious thing, but it's an obvious like this is gonna be so cool. It's for almost no reason, but it's so cool. But it was, and it gave like rise to that overall tone and just the pacing as well. So yeah, I think that you're correct that it definitely just yeah, like historically too, just felt like this is very real.
yeah, and I really appreciated the um color versus the black and white kind of transitions
Mm,
because especially because like I'm not a huge film person, I'm more of a writer. It's like you always ask the question, what is the best way to transition between different timepieces, right?
mm,
And I think with the back and forth, especially the second time that I saw it, I was like, okay, this is like really well pieced together.
mm.
Confusing the first time, so I definitely, whether at home or wherever back in the theater, like I encourage people to watch it again if they
Mm.
really were interested in it. It helps untangle things a little bit better.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Because I was talking to somebody, it might have been you, I can't remember. I've talked to so many people this movie that the black and white in my head, I'm like, okay, it's all flashback. But then there were like parts that I was like, is this part of flash forward?
Mm.
Like after the fact, and I couldn't really. I was a little confused actually. Well, during the movie I was fine, but then the more I thought about it, there were certain parts that I was like, wait, so in what sense did this happen? Because like everything with Robert Downey Jr. I was like, okay, all the black and white is in the past, but then, yeah, no, I'm getting myself confused now.
Well, no, what's
But
funny is the black and white was the future. That's what I found was interesting. Black and white was the future. Cleo, I'm sorry, that's my dog. She's adorable, but she's obnoxious.
well, yeah,
That's the
what?
future because everything happening in the black and white was the Senate confirmation politics. But it's like
Right,
every time it went back in color, they were referencing what had already happened.
right. Yeah, okay, yes.
Yeah,
That's what it was because
I thought that was an interesting choice.
that's what it was because then there's that scene where Robert Downey Jr. Comes in, he pulls off the scarf, very Robert Downey Jr. like, and he sits at the table with that big bass, and for some reason, it's a huge set pieces that they have to keep moving the bass, which is really funny.
What's funny though is like
But
that's such a thing though.
I
Like
know, yeah, no, it was great.
obnoxious, like
It was
filigree. I
hilarious.
was like, yep,
But was that also in the future, or was that?
no,
Well, see, okay, that's where
that
it
was
gets
past.
confusing.
Well, but here's the thing. I think the reason my head was able to comprehend it because up until that part, my head was like, okay, everything in black and white is basically future or present tense. Everything in color is Oppenheimer's mostly perspective in that discussion of the security clearance.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started piecing together and figuring out what Strauss did, those flashbacks, those little moments in color were still flashbacks, but they used the same formatting as when we were back in Robert's perspective.
Mm.
So the black and white was always present and or slightly future. I would say it's present, but then every color was a flashback regardless of kind of whose it was, even though it was mostly Robert's.
Yeah,
My
right,
favorite
right,
example is like when Strauss was explaining like basically his whole point, like the like when Oppie came to his house and he talked about the clearance not being accepted,
right. Mm.
how Strauss's perspective, but then
Mm-hmm.
later when it was in color, in his like perspective, the same exact event.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah, I think I just like
It was
I'm
confusing though in
just gonna
some
have
part.
to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch it again just to like. I mean, in general, it's a lot, because and did you see? Uh, I think it was Logan Paul. Did you see his comment on the movie?
I care about Paul Brothers.
He walked out of the movie halfway through and just said, "It's all talking," and I'm like, bro.
But
Come on. Like, okay, in a sense, I know what he means, and we'll talk about this in just a sec. I get what he means because it is a lot. It is a lot of talk. It's a lot of talking, and I was also caught off guard by this whole like the whole movie feels like a montage thing. But he could have said that, like, just to be
okay,
like,
that's
oh,
fine.
it's so much talking, like,
Like,
bro.
what did you go and expect it? But no, we don't need to get into that
So
thought
I just
process.
thought that was funny, but
That's extremely
um
funny.
there is like I guess a tiny bit of legitimacy to that in that this movie, like I said, did catch me off guard because like the first bit of Elvis, and I said this in my review too, the first bit of Elvis is like one big montage, and after a while I'm like, oh my god, is this gonna be the whole movie? Like this doesn't feel like a movie, it feels like I'm watching a museum reel of Elvis's life. It doesn't feel like actual scenes that I can ground myself in, and that's part of the reason that I have a problem with biopics is because
Mm,
I feel like we can't ever actually get into the character because we're trying to cover their entire life. So I'm like, just focus
right.
on one part. But
Mhm.
this, because it was 3 hours and it could fit more in, um, I started to understand why they were doing it because I mean, the whole movie, you're just on the edge of your seat because it just doesn't stop. And it's not
Mhm.
all action or anything, but it's just like people, thoughts, conversations, dialogue happening 24/7, and it's all interesting.
Right.
So,
Right.
what was your thoughts on the pacing of the movie? Did you like it basically how it felt like almost like a montage for most of it except for a few scenes?
So, I can definitely see that perspective. It's funny enough, I didn't feel that way. I think because I came into this movie not expecting any action at all. I don't know why, but the minute that they started the movie and it was some sort of like government clearance investigation, I knew this was like, there was not going to be super intense scenes of action. I was ready for it because, like, you know, so for those who don't know me, which is all of you, I live in Santa Fe now. I don't live in Los Alamos anymore. But I lived there for a long time, for like gaps of time. And the thing with people who get security clearances that I've heard is that it is literally an investigation of basically your whole life. Now, there's like certain parts, like someone told me like if you moved a bunch, it only goes back like 5 or 10 years, something like that. But it's like, it's your whole life. And so it's like, you know, when I saw what the movie was doing, I was like, okay, we're going to get a lot of info for certain parts really fast. And then we're going to get a lot of info really slow. Because the thing is, like, the pacing of the movie definitely felt off until I watched it that second time and I realized, like, oh, and this makes to the point of, sorry, I'm skipping a bit, but the low that you pointed out about not having all the information, my head went, dude, with this security clearance and Senate and whatever conversation, they know everything. So they're not going to take the time to explain anything. Because I think that's a really beautiful piece of Nolan's movies is that he doesn't give the reader anything when he's doing like historical pieces. Because why would these people need to talk about who is this, or what does his name do? Where's the position are they? Because they already know it.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
There's no extra need because in fiction it's like required sometimes. Have the reader a little bit of a bone, or they're going to be super confused.
Yeah.
But like with the historic optic, especially with this kind of setting of internal government secret affairs, the people asking the questions and making the comment, they know everything. So there's no need to extra explain, which is annoying. Nolan's kind of like, oh, you want to know more? Get this, go research, have fun. But
yeah.
I'm like, you know, mad respect, you definitely kept it realistic. No. Pacing, I naturally want to say it could have been done differently, but I almost think it can't for what he was trying to show.
Yeah, that's true.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I feel like I'm talking.
No. That's good. I mean, it's a really, that's a good insight because I mean, what do all of us criticize almost all the time about movies is like, why would they be talking about that? They already know that. Have you ever seen Big Hero 6?
Yes.
Okay, I love that movie. However, right at the beginning, there's that part when Hero's talking to his brother, and his brother says something about their parents, and Hero literally goes, "No, because they died, remember?" And I'm like, Jesus, why?
And you're like, no, oh man, I just completely blanked out.
Yeah, my bad.
Died.
That's right. I forgot.
At a tragic age.
So that is a really good point. And I will say, for, you know, not giving a lot of that exposition through like characters needlessly talking about stuff they already know. And, you know, for someone like me who has no idea about most of the stuff, I still was able to comprehend most of what was happening. And I think it is because even with all the details underneath, the basic plot is very straightforward. It is, he's trying to get this clearance. Strauss is screwing with that, but we didn't know that at the end.
Yeah.
They're building a bomb. That's the plot. They're building the bomb. He's trying to get the clearance later on. Because of this, he had conflicting thoughts about it. You can go into the details later because like there was that one part where, again, around the table with the flower vase, where right around that part, and they were like, well, what about this case? And what about that guy? And then Casey Affleck comes in, and I'm like, there are so many new names that
When did he come in?
Casey Affleck?
Yeah.
He was like, who was he?
Yeah.
He was, I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
You're like, you'll see him, and I'm like, I did not.
I was a little confused at this part. As to exactly what was going on. He was the one military guy. I'm sorry, I don't know any military things. He's a general or something. Where he came in, he was doing some sort of investigation into Oppenheimer, and later on we found out that he recorded the
Why?
conversation. That's Casey Affleck.
Oh, got it.
And it was around
Okay.
that point that I was, because it was him and I forget his name, but the guy that David Desmalchian plays. It was those two characters I think were brought up simultaneously, and
Yeah.
I'm like, what? David Desmalchian is he's in almost all of Nolan's movies. He was the one who Strauss gave the file to
Was
be
he the
the one
guy?
to.
Was he the guy with the glasses, the military guy who didn't like Oppie? And then he gave the guy with the guy who wrote up.
No, that's Dane DeHaan. Uh, David Desmalchian is of course they're both double D initials. David Desmalchian, he was only, you can just look up, he was only in it for like a handful of scenes. But he yeah, it was him and Casey Affleck's characters, both of which came up at like the same time with new names, and I'm like, I literally have no idea at this point. And it was interesting too.
Because I want to know what his. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
guy.
that guy.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Anyway.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Dane DeHaan because he also had glasses.
No, you're right. I was talking about the dude at the desk, not the dude across from the desk.
Yeah,
Borden.
but
He played Borden.
Borden, I knew it began with a B. I knew it.
Yeah, he played William Borden.
Yeah. And it was funny. Think about some of the other characters too. That like, it's another reason that I got to watch it again, because there was a lot of these back and forths in the dialogue where some characters seemed very opposed to doing all this, and then next thing you know, they're like there at the site working on stuff, and I was like, wait, I thought you didn't want to be here like at all.
Right.
And then at one point they were like, this is all top secret classified information, you can't say it. The guy comes in, he's like, I'm gonna say it anyway, and they're like joking it off, and the guy like rolls his eyes. I'm like, wait, but weren't you not serious? Like,
Wait, no. I think I know what scene you're talking about. Is it when Lewis came in? Yeah, and he was
he's
like
walking down the hall, he's showing him everything. He was showing.
Wait, was it when he was talking to Groves and he was like, Groves was like, do you remember what I told you about like the talking to multiple groups? And then he's like, yeah. And he's like, no, I heard you. He's like, I didn't say I agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing is, it wasn't that he was telling them classified information, because like it was classified. The problem wasn't that. The problem was that it was different groups talking to each other.
Oh.
Because the problem is they were like thinking, the military's thinking was, if all of these independent groups were able to talk too much to each other, like problems could happen, information could leak and all this. So they wanted to keep them independent that when the information finally came together, only a select few people knew everything, which is almost kind of like how Shakespeare worked. How actors in Shakespeare's play only got chunks of their dialogue and stuff, rather than the whole play itself. That was the military's thinking, but the scientists were like, no, we literally cannot do our job unless we all talk together. So we're going to ignore you.
Yeah. I also think it was funny how almost every young scientist that Christopher Nolan picked, it was almost like he was like, it'd be cool if we threw this guy in there. Like Alex Wolff, Jack Quaid, Josh Peck, Michael Angarano from Sky High.
Oh, like, yeah.
Where did he think? Oh, and Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Like, where did he think to get these guys?
I liked that he kind of threw people like that in there, because I was just kind of like, I don't know, because I think for me the other thing is like, just like you were saying, even if you don't know all of these people, you still can kind of follow along. So for me, in my head, I was like, I don't know most of these scientists. I don't know what they do. Like, I know they're important, but it's like, they establish really quickly that they're a scientist, and then cool, move on. Like, I don't need to know all this background stuff. So it was fun seeing a little bit more famous or just kind of random actors and actresses here and there, because I'm like, no, look at you. Like, you're actually in it. Like, you're probably a really important person, but I don't know who you are. But like, hi.
It's funny because you're like actors and actresses, but like, It's pretty much just actors in this movie.
I
It's literally
know. I was
Emily
trying
Blunt
to
and
be
Florence Pugh.
inclusive. It came out
But
of my
like
mouth, and I was
that,
like,
but
no.
it's what I mean, because it makes, I guess it makes sense for the time period, but also like where Barbie was the whole like, this is the women's film. This was like that. There's two women in this movie, maybe three. That's like literally in Barbie when he's like, that's two right there. Um, yeah, no. So we had Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh, and I know we're both diehard Florence Pugh fans here, like way more even so than me. Um,
You can't blame me.
no, I can't. No,
She's
absolutely not.
talented and gorgeous. Like, what am I
Absolutely
supposed to
not.
do with that combination?
She's lovely. We love Florence Pugh.
You do.
I would have. That was one of those things that I was like, mostly his romantic life. It had to be brought up, but it feels like, especially with Florence Pugh. Now, obviously, because it's based on real events, this is probably most of what happened, and there really maybe didn't need to be much more with it. But it just felt like, okay, she's in the movie, and cool. All right, she's not in the movie. That was it. That was a very short subplot that they just like touched on, but it really didn't go into that much. So it felt like either like this should have been like I don't know, like they either should have gone into it more. No, maybe not. I don't know. It's like, again, they have to bring it up because it affects a lot of stuff. Um, but it felt like they got this really big person to be in it for like half a second.
Yeah.
Of course, we saw a lot of her, so there was that.
You know,
Uh,
we don't need to have that discussion.
oh, um,
Up is because, with I was saying, with clearance investigations, it is your whole life. And it's not just the fact she was like with him at one point, it was the fact that she was a communist with him.
yeah,
That's why she was brought in, because like to say she had zero commie ties, and I'm gonna say it's not the correct word anymore, but that's what they say. Excuse me, everyone watching, if it but since she had those ties, that's especially why she was brought in. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Because if she had just been, regular American, they probably wouldn't have brought her up at all.
yeah.
I mean,
That's true.
Oppenheimer has ups and downs, as everyone does, but he did have an element of womanizing there, here and there, and they didn't bring up every single woman he had any like interaction with. It was just her specifically because of the closeness,
That's
the
true.
nature of the relationship, and the communism element.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But oh my god, Emily Blunt's responses in the interview, like
That was awesome.
I was dying. I was like, yes, that's how you do it right there.
No, that was awesome. I just wish, and again, it's based off real people, so like this is probably how she was, and we talked about this a little bit. That I thought, and nothing against Emily Blunt. This is probably just how it was written and directed. She's an incredible actress. That her character was like super, like it was weird. It was like her whole marriage with Oppenheimer felt like a business deal. It was like every time they talked, it was almost like they should end with a handshake, like well done. Like it was weird. It was weird. And like I get it, and like, but I don't know, the way that they introduced it is like, oh, they fell in love because of this really quick, like heated conversation. It was cool. And then the rest of the time she's like a drill, like this drill sergeant or something. It was weird, but I get it.
Well, I will say, actually, you just pointing that out, I think that was one part of the movie that did suffer, because it's like, yes, we did see many peaks into their relationship and their marriage, but it's like, I don't think we saw enough to really understand their dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I also kind of agreed it was a little like flatter, but it also makes question, I don't know enough research about Oppie's wife and like all that other stuff, but it also goes, like you said, was it really transactional, or did it end up becoming that way? And how did it shift and change? Because we almost saw these little too short of pockets in too many gaps of time.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't close enough together that things kind of made sense. There was a lot of time. And so their reactions to each other and interactions changed in a way that didn't always completely make sense.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
also this time, it's like you have to raise the question, what parts of the life movie history does he have to forfeit without making this a 5-hour movie?
Right.
You know, because if that's the part that has to suffer, that's what you have to give up. You know?
Right. And you know, I kept thinking maybe this should have been like a mini series. And in terms of the content put out, like the story, I think maybe. But then again, if it was a mini series, I don't know how many people would have actually watched it. Because it couldn't have that scope. I mean, it can have the scope, but you're not going to have it in a big theater with an incredible sound and everything like that. And it had to be one big experience.
And I do think, I know this wasn't intention planned, but I think the release of the two movies at the exact same time was perfect.
Oh yeah.
Like the creation of Barbenheimer is like amazing, especially with the fact they are two dramatically different conversations, but they are so important that need to happen.
Yeah.
I just love that. Not only, and I use the pun, and I don't want to use it as a pun, but it came to my head. Not only did they both blow up, it's like I love that they mutually supported each other. You know, like the actors going to each other's like movies and stuff. But my big issue with the movie, and there's a lot of issues with the movie, in not issues with the movie, issues with the actual content. I'll say that. Like the conversation of like real life, not the movie itself. The movie was great. But there's the whole discussion about downwinders, and there's all this other discussion about the actual like victims of the bomb dropping. Because I do have someone who works with my mom, and she was in Hiroshima at one point, and they were at like a memorial or museum, something like that. I don't remember what it was called. And she talked to one of the survivors who was 5 years old at the time.
Yes.
Remembered it. So it's like those conversations cannot happen in a 3-hour movie. And I also, you know, looking at again what Nolan was trying to cover, it makes sense why they were not brought up, because they were not things that needed to be brought up for a Senate conversation or a clearance conversation. However, like what I would have liked from a movie series or from a TV series or a streaming series is it brings up opportunities for those discussions.
Yeah. I mean, and that also, I mean, even just hearing that now makes it feel like, you know, because we always see those things that's like, oh, you know, all of history in the 60s, 50s, everything, we're always like, oh, it was so far away. And then you see these things that are like, oh, you know, if they were still alive today, they would only be 80 years old. And it's that kind of thing where it makes it feel like, okay, yeah, this wasn't that long ago. These people are still alive. It's still relevant, and it's insane. And just that topic of, you know, which I think with things like AI and stuff, you know, coming on the rise, I mean, it's still a very pertinent question of things like, when is too far in discovery? When is too far in creating things that, like, you know, do we have to, because of the whole like, oh, other countries are going to do it, like in this movie, other countries, the only reason we did is because other countries are going to do it. And it's like, are we, not to like quickly go down the rabbit hole, but like, are we going to destroy ourselves? Like, you know, so it was interesting, you know, it was one of those like, oh, like when he came out with, I'm doing Oppenheimer, I was like, all right, so it's just another biopic. I want something cool and sci-fi, but it brings up a lot of stuff I didn't think we had to talk about.
Because so right before I saw it the second time, right? Okay. There was a trailer for, I don't know if this is going to be like a full huge fledged film or if this is going to be like a smaller film that's coming. It's called First We Bombed New Mexico. Talks about the untold part of Trinity and how these half-lives of that one bomb are ruining generation after generation after generation of downwinders, and it will continue to do so.
Yeah.
Because
you know,
like, stuff, but it's like, think about ruining these sound, like town cities, all these, like killing people, like the amount of like generations that have just cancer, and it's like like, I wish the conversations that need to happen were happening more, but I do think Nolan's creation of this film will hopefully start to open doors about topics of history that talk about that, but it has that controversy. And it kind of goes, okay, so maybe we'll make a film about this in this sort of, he specifically, at least in my opinion, left it in a gray. And I loved that because I'm like, now it leaves conversation of like good. Just especially just with New Mexico, it's so complicated.
Yeah.
Because first off, like people really there's just like this, I'll be nice. There's just like this mentality sometimes in Los Alamos of like being, you know, oh, we're so important, like we're at the lab, we're like we do this and this, and I'm like, honey, no one knows who you are. Like someone will know the bomb came from here, but 9 times out of 10 they have no clue. And then it's like stuff now, which is awesome. And you know, not but, and my mom's teaching me that bomb led to literal destruction of this place that Avi loved. Just, it's like shook my bones, dude.
Yeah. And because I think you might have mentioned this, and then I was talking to other people, and I got that same conclusion that I was always under the impression that in New Mexico, Los Alamos was like, you know, like the general American in any state, you know, for any state, they're like, oh, I know that one city. I thought Los Alamos was like one of those 2 that everybody knows in New Mexico. I've always heard of it, like, and nobody knows what I'm talking about. I'm like, what? I thought it was like the, you know, oh, not that Hollywood is a city, but you know, like, okay, Hollywood or like San Francisco, you know, it's like everyone knows that. I thought it was that for New Mexico. I thought, but I guess not. It's the weirdest thing. So like, yeah, it's funny, like nobody knows, or at least they didn't. They do now, I hope. But yeah, it is really interesting. What was the name of that movie you said?
I think it's First We Bombed New Mexico.
First We Bombed New Mexico. Okay.
Which is like you think about, yeah, we did. Whether we meant to or not, we did.
Yeah.
They had the same stuff, you know.
Kinda, yeah.
It was like not the same stuff, I believe. It wasn't killing range, but it had the same after effects. And the different, like the other thing is, these people were told. Because like with Hiroshima, the bomb was dropped and it was very clear. With the test, with the Trinity test, all the downwind, like no one knew that was going to happen. But after they knew, no one was told. So it's just like, well, and like the thing is, down in that area of New Mexico, there's ranches, there's farms, there's stuff like that, and they're ruined.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
Because you know, people are like, what about forever? I'm like, for whatever life, whatever chemical, that's basically forever.
Yeah.
So have it like right now, but I think that's probably why, though, I can understand why the downwinder conversation wasn't brought in, simply because it didn't fit the context of what was being displayed in the downwinders, in the context of Oppie trying to get his clearance back. You know, but I do like the idea that they made some sort of like either bigger or smaller size film, giving the downwinders their time to talk and explain the situation from their point of view.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So yeah, we have talked a lot about the visual side of it, a lot about like the pacing and everything, a lot about the just kind of tone of the movie. One quick thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about this was that apparently Christopher Nolan, when he was writing the script, in everything in black and white was objective, so written in third person, but then everything, like most scripts are, but then everything in color, it was subjective. He wrote in first person, which like never happens.
That makes sense.
So that was pretty cool. I wonder how that, I mean, it makes sense.
I can see that too.
how that affected like how he directed it too, you know. Um, but yeah, so I definitely want to talk a little bit, just like a little bit about. We talked about most of it, but just some of the acting. Specifically, we haven't talked about Killian Murphy. So how do you say it?
How do I say it? I don't. Just, I just say that one guy from that one
The
show who
one
looks
thing,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, and I'm like, there you go.
I think it's Killian Murphy because Cillian Murphy. I don't know. It sounds silly, but
It does sound silly. So
um,
let's go with
but
that one.
Killian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr.
Incredible.
Yeah, like Killian Murphy. The thing with this type of movie is, you know, Robert Downey Jr. said something like, "Oh, Killian Murphy like really put himself out there and he like sacrificed a lot and everything." And a lot of people had the thoughts that I had of like, all right, listen, even for a film guy, it's you. It's hard to say to the general public, this actor in this big movie making millions of dollars really put himself on the line. But this one, you are like the front guy out of 1,000 people, and you really make or break the movie. You have to carry it, even if, especially in some of those scenes where it's like a lot of conflicting emotions, like that one where he first has the stress about it when everybody's cheering him on.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was probably my favorite scene in the movie.
So I just think he did incredible because not only is he just the front guy, he had to literally embody Oppenheimer to the point almost beyond acting. Because in order to make it actually plausible, he had to step into being Oppenheimer so that when he delivered his lines and he was in these situations as if he was in Oppenheimer's life discussing these like deep parts of his own existence. Like, did you say Killian?
Huh?
Did you say Killian? Is that his name? How did you say it?
I think it's Killian.
Okay, that's what I'll say. Sorry for wrong. Like he took it. I think you were the one who told me this. It was like Robert Downey Jr. was like, "Oh, we have a 3-day weekend, and like, well, do you want to go out? Do you want to go do something?" But then Killian would be like, "Oh no, I have like 30,000 words of Dutch to learn. So like, y'all go ahead. I'm good." And I was like, "What?"
I did not tell you that, but that is interesting.
Yeah, someone told me that, and I was like, "What do you mean?"
But he doesn't. Does he
Dutch.
speak Dutch in the movie? He does not speak 30,000 words of Dutch, though.
But it's like it shows his dedication to the fact he was really stepping in to become this man because he's not just a character. He's a person a lot of people in that realm know about.
Mm-hmm.
And so another fun, my hat's off to him. That pork pie hat, like the most famous thing around here about him. So like, also I did like, I'm a writer, so you know this. I spent like 2.5 hours rabbit hole research digging about pipes, and his pipe shape is like the most inconvenient one possible. But I was like, okay, Oppie, you do you. Not relevant. But no, and then the acting for Robert Downey Jr. also incredible, especially with the fact of that conflict between Strauss and Oppie, because you know they're both Jewish, right?
The character or the people or the actors?
Character.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like there's that. I mean, that's not relevant, but like in my head, it's like there was just like such a deeper embodiment of just their interactions as people beyond just the situation of the clearance and all of that, because they had some extreme in life, like philosophy, political ideology, whatever conflicts as individuals beyond what the movie showed. And I think their acting definitely personified that tension that went outside of those unique situations.
Oh yeah. No, I mean it was so it definitely felt like, you know, everything that went in this movie made it feel bigger. Like there are other things outside the movie we haven't seen. It was incredible. Like Robert Downey Jr., that last 10 minutes, some of the, and I am always floored or at least really impressed when actors who I know can already act. And they're in these other movies where it's like, okay, you're in another movie that's obviously going to be a very acty movie that's going to get you an Oscar or whatever. But when they actually still like I don't even I'm not even when I'm seeing the movie, I'm not even thinking that. I'm like, this is just good. It's not you're acting very actory. It's just good. And he was so good. And those last 10 minutes especially. It was oh my god, I like one of my favorite performances of the year by far.
Yeah. And like I was in the Student Government Association for 2 years.
Mm,
And there were a lot of great people I met. There was a lot of not so great people I met. No names will be disclosed. But the way that Robert Downey Jr. was acting as a politician, I was so grossed out because I'm like, that's what they're like.
yeah.
And I don't like it. It made me feel icky. However, I can't remember the name of the actor who was like his like the person helping him and was like, "Oh, you're gonna be fine." Like everyone's always been appointed, like that guy.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Okay, sure. Let's go with that. But then toward the end, he was like, "It was you. You did
Yeah.
all of it." Like right before you open the door, he's like, "Who knows? Maybe they were talking about something more important than you." And I was like,
Yeah, I was and you know what's funny is for not knowing all the details of the movie, while I'm watching it, right at the end, it was kind of like when I saw the Batman. You haven't seen the Batman, right? Okay, well, so
"Haven't
I
convinced
won't say
me
in
yet."
details, but for everybody watching who has seen the Batman, when they reveal at the end who was the big person behind a lot of this, and my thoughts were like, well, yeah, like no shit, like oh god, the bad guy was the bad guy, no way. And
Yeah.
I kind of had that thought here too, where I was like, I didn't really realize that, you know, I guess the thing was is I didn't realize there was even like a mystery to begin with, like oh who set this up.
Mm.
So like that was surprising. But if they had been like, oh, who set this up, I would have been like, it was him. It was the guy. Which also it's funny that you brought up the Shakespeare thing earlier too, because somebody or maybe I just thought of this. I don't know, maybe this somebody was me. Made the analogy that it was like Oppenheimer and Strauss was kind of like Shakespeare and I saw the show. It should have had more seasons. And I can't remember his name. The guy that Jamie Campbell Bower played. That
Can't
guy.
remember his name, but I know I know what you're talking
Where
about.
like
Yeah.
you have the underdog who like can speak to the people really well because he knows the people versus the guy who's really rich. He's been in politics and he's really high up, but he just everyone hates him. And he's gotten and it's fun and it is funny how all of this came from Strauss being like, I think he was talking about me, and he embarrassed me once, and it's like, Jesus, dude, get over it.
I know you're like, dude, this is not about you,
This
honey.
isn't high
No,
school.
no. Like, and
Um,
but that being the ending of the film was amazing.
yeah, and the
I
fact
believe,
and it's the fact that he still didn't get the clearance
I
is
know.
so interesting. But yeah, I like how it ended, not vaguely, but there wasn't necessarily a this is what the movie felt about Oppenheimer. It just presented the stuff. It said he did do some things. He did feel bad about some things. He didn't feel bad about some things. You decide.
Well, but
He was a person.
right. Here's the thing, though. A lot of people don't actually know. After the whole bomb situation, he was actually crushed. Like
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of his life, philosophically, he was like in just mental torment for the rest of
Yeah.
his life because he never reconciled with it. Because he was hugely open to philosophy and he was, like you saw, he had the Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit in his freaking house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like what I was just like reminding myself of real quick is that statement, like, and now I am become death, that actual word of death is not the only translation. Um, because that can actually also be translated of like world destroyer time or world destroying time. Because the thing is, when the god is saying it, he's going through all of the forms that he could possibly be.
Yeah.
So, life bringing this, that, creating the world, also destroying the world. Like the god is everything.
Yeah.
So the fact that in Oppenheimer's translation that he got from his Sanskrit like translator and tutor was death is even more interesting.
Yeah.
Because it also just shows with his philosophy of this, like the reason it like mentally could have crumbled, it's just he is not a god and he only became this horrible death part. There was no balance of the
Yeah.
giving life and giving death.
Yeah.
And so it makes perfect sense why it just like made him collapse. Not like collapse, but it's just like from that.
Hmm. And I did think it was, interesting. Right after I saw it, I was like, so if he was so crushed by it, why did he go so hard on making it in the first place?
Mm.
And it's, I think it was talking with a couple of people. It was a combination of he got kind of swept up in it, being the leader of it all, the
Mhm.
possibilities of it, but then also just the general. I mean, that philosophy was still there of like, well, we're making it to show we can make it. First of all,
Mm.
we're making it to show that we also can have that power, and because they were scared that other people were going to make it and use it for the same thing, so it's kind of a race sort of deal.
And there's a third piece. They didn't know what was going to happen.
That's true.
It hadn't happened yet. So like that's why I love how Nolan did the explosion, because they sat there like, oh God, what have we done?
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't know.
Yeah.
It's not like now where we do know. No one knew.
True.
And no one had seen anything like it before.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer said in conversations about this, he was like, this, like, we all knew we changed the world in that moment. He goes, some people were like cheering, some were crying, most were silent.
Mm-hmm.
It opened Pandora's box of something no one had ever seen.
Yeah, because once it's done, it can't be
Can't close the
undone.
box.
I mean, it's human nature. It's not. I mean, it's not like gonna be like, all right, you know what? Let's just not touch it again. Like, sorry, not to get political, but like, as long as Vladimir Putin is in the world and anyone like him,
Mm-hmm.
anybody with a hint of, hey, we could do this if we needed to.
And there will always will be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And,
but on a lighter note than that, because that's super depressing, and that conversation needs to happen with everyone, not not us.
Getting existential.
So my friend actually made a meme before Oppenheimer came out, and it was I don't know the exact situation of the meme, but it's the one where a guy is sitting with a woman in like some sort of sports stands, and he's like leaning over and talking to her, and she's just like not paying attention.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he clearly is not caring that she's not paying attention. And it was saying how, like, like the Oppenheimer movie was like filmed in my town, and like, they were filming it there. And then like one day my friend was in the bagel shop, that's a local bagel shop, and then he heard an order being called out for Matt, and he like turned around and it was Matt Damon. And he like got pictures, and I was like, yeah, I knew that friend too. And I was like, yeah, we're doing it.
That's so
Mateo got pictures of Matt Damon, which was painful because I was like, man, I still lived there when that was happening.
Yeah. Well, so actually that's a good transition right into a couple of questions, since you lived there and still close there and know a lot of what was going on, or maybe at least a little bit. So do you know like how much they filmed there and like what types of scenes from the movie it was?
Okay, so I don't know how much they filmed there. Now there's a fun thing that happens around Los Alamos, especially, but sometimes in like Santa Fe, there are big plastic yellow signs that have some sort of letters on it. And they're put on like light posts, like stoplights, stuff like that. And they have arrows. So those signs, we all know, lead to where filming is happening. Like, we don't, but the thing is, the letters, you don't know what it is. You don't know who might be there. And, they never actually disclose where it is, so people can't just go swarm it. So I do know that they went into, right? The big one at one point, they had a party.
Oh yeah,
that's in the middle of town.
Oh, okay.
I also found it fun that they didn't have a pond, because there's a pond in the middle of town. And like, I can't remember who Ashley Pond was, but he was a really important guy like in town. But they named the pond here Ashley Pond. So it's technically Ashley Pond, but no one seems to bring that up, but it's okay.
Kind of like also, ATM machine.
Exactly. But the lodge is so claustrophobic. Like, I cannot explain to you how, like, so tall, but it is like you get in like,
and that that was the where he met Florence Pugh's character, right?
No,
Oh wait, which lads?
when they're in town, when they were doing the Christmas party and
Oh,
Boar
that lot.
showed
Oh,
up,
okay, the
and then
Christmas.
there was the stands when they were cheering and Trump
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's a very, it's not small, it's just claustrophobic.
yeah.
And also my head went, oh, who's there at the time, or did they just not want to take him off the wall? Because they're there.
That is funny. That is really Oppenheimer
So
making
they did that.
bombs and
What I
shooting.
found funny as well is so when they were driving into Los Alamos, white little building that said like whatever Los Alamos, and you drive past it, it was like a little, okay, that exists. They keep it at the front of the town so you can see it when you drive in, because that was the original like guard getting into town. And my dad and I, when we were watching it, they have it facing forward when you're watching the screen. You can see it and you're like, oh, cool, you can read what it says. But my dad and I go, there was a gate. It has a guard gate. So you need the opening to be on the side, not the front, so that when the car pulls up, you can see their badge. Cinema.
Oh my god.
But it exists, and we still
Yeah.
have it in town. The other thing was when they were like, "This is it." They're like, "What?" He goes, "This is Los Alamos." We were all like, "Where are you?" You're like, "It's very flat. Where are you?" Because Los Alamos is on a mesa, so it's like when they were like, "It's here," I'm like, "No, it's not. You're in a very flat, grassy area, and we don't know where you are." Because like if you're looking at it, there's like hard to explain, but like there was a volcano in the Via Caldera. So when it erupted, it created mesas, almost like fingers. And Los Alamos is one of them. So it's up on a mesa, which is actually called Battleship Rock.
Mhm.
Because it looks like it when you're driving. So it's like when they were on this flat ground, we were like, "Where are you?" You know you're in New Mexico, but where?
That's true.
The thing is, they can't film it
Right.
because the town exists.
Right.
So we can't go where the mesa is. I literally asked my mom, I was like, "Oh, do they have like Battleship Rock in there?" And I went, "Oh, no," because there's pavement of the whole outside because the road that you came up on when you came out to visit.
Mhm.
By the way, we had a thought. We were like, the roads here are terrible. So scary. But then
Mhm.
I went, wait a minute, we're probably typically only driven by government vehicles because I went, when they're up there, they were stuck.
Yeah.
Just constantly go in and out, like so they
Yeah.
wouldn't use regular cars,
Right. Right.
But we were like, how did their cars? Like you saw it paved.
Yeah.
It's pretty winding and right against the canyon.
Oh yeah.
So it was not paved.
Can confirm.
Can confirm. My but my stupid self literally almost my parents in the middle of the movie. Oh hey, is the Trinity Tower still there? And I went,
There might be one reason it's not.
I was like, oh my god. And the fact they put mattresses under it when they were pulling it up, I was like, okay, I get what they're trying to do, but like, really, guys?
Yeah, they had to. I just
Yeah.
It was funny during that scene. I didn't register how far away they were. It didn't feel in the movie like they were that far away.
Oh yeah.
What happened was instead of it being they're very far away and the explosion is so big, it still looks like it's not that far away from there. In my head, I went, they don't seem like they're far enough away. They're gonna die or get radiation poisoning. And it just goes to show, I mean, how huge that explosion is that they were that far away and could see it. I do like Betty Safdie just lotioning his entire face with sunblock just in case.
Like, is it rubbed in?
For sure. Huh?
He goes, is it rubbed in?
Yeah. And like friggin', and then they're just like lay on the ground, and I'm like, guys, this is
the mattresses that did it.
They didn't know what was gonna happen, but like if you think what is gonna happen is gonna happen, you standing up and looking at it or laying on the ground isn't gonna make a difference.
It's true. I mean, again, that just toes the line of, well, this is what theory says it's going to happen, but what's actually going to happen.
Right.
So like we're going to take what we think are the proper precautions, like laying on
Right.
mattresses with welder's glass. But no, it's just I don't know where they filmed, which is like I was like, where are they? But what's funny though is like obvious comments about the storms and stuff. He's not wrong. Weather here changed on the dime.
Yeah.
Like we went to the balloon fiesta in October. Like one of my cousins like boyfriends was like, oh, like maybe the wind will change because the wind started picking up, and my family were like, no, we're gonna go. And I was like, no, started. It's not going to stop.
Yeah.
In Albuquerque, mountains are not there to stop wind that's like going this direction rather than this direction.
Yeah.
And so no, it's not going to stop. So it's like Mexico weather can be super unpredictable, especially in monsoon season, but it also can be like, okay, it's monsoon season. There should be a rain in the afternoon. So then I should, I know the time block, right? Unpredictably predictable.
That is interesting.
Or predictably unpredictable. You know what I'm trying to say?
And that's interesting because in a lot of movies it feels like it just started to rain out of nowhere. That's convenient, but I mean it's true. And also the fact that even though it was played as a funny moment, the fact that anytime you drop an atom or a nuclear bomb, it has a 0.1% chance of blowing up the world if it ignites the air. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And like, so for some of my scientist friends who they know the subject, like they like moved out of state a while ago, but they did sciencey stuff in college. They were kind of like, yeah, well, the movie's a little exaggerated. And I'm like, yeah, but there's still, they said a near zero. And I go, wait a minute. So you're telling me we are consistently making the same kind of bombs, all with a near zero chance, and we're keeping them all together with a possibility of mistaken and blown up. And I'm like, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's a whole other discussion of bombs, not bombs, deterrent. What did my dad say during that time era? It was mutually assured destruction, MAD. And it was you're making them, so I'm gonna make them. So it's an equality of if you come at me, I come at you, and we're both going to be destroyed. Just like Oppenheimer's example of the 2 scorpions in a bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. God, it makes me think of that. Again, not being political, it just happens to be. With the John Mulaney
movie.
The John Mulaney, the John Mulaney bit when he's like, I'm gonna press the button. I'm gonna stamp on you with my hoof so hard. It's like that back and forth. And everyone in the middle is like, okay.
What I also find funny is my dad was making the critique of like, I want to see the scene where the guy has his. I'm so sorry, guys. Stop. Dogs, man, you love them.
Yeah.
Can't record videos with. Dad was like, why is the guy's hand like shaking over the button? And I told him after, because I'd seen it before my dad came. The button wasn't to drop the bomb.
Yeah. It was
was where Oppie was like, it dipped below this number to abort. It was to abort. Like it to look like it might be that. But also my hand on someone to push a button, which could be faulty.
Yeah.
So, but my dad was like, yeah, that's why his hand was shaking, because homeboy was staring at that needle.
Yeah.
Like, if it dipped right away, it was shock back. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was funny. I was going to mention that just a real quick, like, of all the people to be like, hey, in case this might blow up the world, please stop it. It was Josh fucking Peck. Like, of all the, like, and
rightfully so.
Everybody I was talking to was like, oh man, it's so funny that like of all the people that pressed the button, it was Josh Peck. I'm like, no. It wasn't to drop it. It was dropping. And that was to stop it. And I mean, imagine, because there's just some things that's like, look, at the end of the day, it's like, obviously you want everybody to be safe. But there's just some things that when they have put all of that time, money, effort, and you can only do this once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, well, you're that person. You're like, did it drop? I don't know. Did it drop below? Should I press it? I don't. If you don't press it, maybe we're screwed. If you do press it, it's like, okay, well, it was fine, but now we can't do it. Thanks a lot. Like, very interesting.
One, what was I gonna say? Oh no, brain, don't do it now. Don't do it now. No, I think all of it was done really well. I mean, some people in Los Alamos, because my parents still live here, viewers, so I come up every once in a while to like see them and let them see their very noisy grand puppy. But some people were really commenting on like, well, I don't think, the person would be like this or this. In my head, I'm like, that's interpretation, but
Yeah.
okay. No, I just think that Nolan did it extremely well. For what he could show, what context could be given. I don't think there was a better way to approach the information.
Yeah.
I think he was really spot on in what he decided to follow as the like track to go on.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, like you said, it kind of monologue-ish. Well, if it was kind of monologue-ish this way, imagine how boring it would have been any other way.
Right. Yeah, because it's funny. Any other movie that's just talking and talking, like there's been a bunch of others that are like about wars and political things. Like I never even got through Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I got like half an hour into the movie. Quick.
I've never seen that yet.
It is not what's the word? Indecipherable. It's like at least okay. I watched a half an hour. Maybe I try to watch the whole thing, but a lot of other people have said that. So there's a way to do it where it's just not good. But in this way, it actually worked towards it in terms of just. I mean, a 3-hour movie felt like a 2-hour movie because it just kept it going. And even if you didn't catch everything, it's like speed reading. Get the basic stuff, enjoy that, and then you can go back and watch it again later for the details.
Yeah, and it kept having this sense of like, what happened? You're like, okay, now I know this. How did we get here?
Right.
We're almost filling in that gap.
Yeah.
What was it? So then when you learn this, like, excuse me, you're like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Remy Malek, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah. I forgot he was in this movie.
I was like, did I say his name right?
Yeah.
His character, because not only does he act like a scientist, because they're special, they're lovely people, but socially awkward. He really explained, like, Oppenheimer losing his clearance was so devastating.
Yeah.
To the scientist. It wasn't a cult of Oppen. It was like he earned it, And also, fun fact for those who do know, the hydrogen bomb. So Teller, the guy who was like didn't rub in all the sunscreen, and then Lawrence. It's Lawrence Livermore. And Lawrence Livermore, there's a lab in California, like Livermore Labs. And that's from his name because Teller and Lawrence left together. And that's where up in Livermore, they started the H-bomb program.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the Livermore because they met direct contact.
Interesting.
Yeah. So when I heard Lawrence Livermore in the movie, I was like,
yeah. Well, so the timer, because Zoom sucks, is going down to about 5 minutes left here. So just I guess a couple just last things. Just out of curiosity, was there anybody that you like just in people that you were talking to about it in the city? Was anybody like obviously a lot of people were really stoked of like, oh my god, this is filming here and like there's Matt Damon. Was there anybody who was like not that psyched about it or like no? That's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, I guess no one would be like super opposed, but
I didn't know any negative about it until after we saw the movie because my friends and I that don't really live here anymore, we've had a much more negative view than some people who still live here.
That's true.
There's a reason. There are other reasons. You're lovely, but you don't get to hear. Like one of my friends who grew up here from birth, like certain parts of like town and memories and stuff as childhood was icky. it was icky seeing it that way.
Yeah.
So, but no, there's your most. Some people even say Avi was.
Wait. So say that part again.
Some people even think that Avi too negatively in their
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah.
Each their own.
Yeah, it's left up to your opinion. I think that's one of the best things about the movie. I mean, I guess one last thing is just overall, what was your favorite scene?
That's not a fair question. Why do you ask me those questions?
Sorry, for me, all right, I'll say maybe two because
Yes, and then I'll go.
I think my favorite has to be the scene with the cheering and the first time he has to panic about it with the infused with the bomb stuff. But then also just at the end with Robert Downey Jr. That was amazing.
I think my two, is one with Einstein, where he goes, like, destroy the world. He goes, I believe that we did. That like sunk in. And the other one was how Nolan gracefully handled the explosion.
True.
The silence and then just the speaking over about being dead. Yeah. And also I do love, and I'll make this quick, I love that they did the difference between speed of light and speed of sound.
Yeah.
A lot of movies, they're smaller explosions, so it's a little different, but like for big enough explosions, there would be a massive difference.
Oh yeah.
But like, bravo.
I knew that was coming. I was sitting there like,
I know, I was like,
yeah.
I want to hear it, but I
don't. Yeah, so, but if you guys watch and have any other questions or anything, definitely put them in the comments below. We'll be checking because I would definitely recommend if anybody hasn't gotten out there to travel to New Mexico. It's absolutely beautiful out there. There's like way more space and room in the world than I thought.
For sure.
It's beautiful. Obviously, it's where they shot some of this. That's pretty cool too, just from a film standpoint. But thank you for coming on and giving us all your insights, because I mean that was just on the location stuff, on the historical context stuff, religious stuff, everything.
Well, thank you for letting me harass you into doing this. I appreciate it.
Of course. No, I mean I love
watching. Lord knows I'm going to try to harass him again about other things.
Yeah. Well, I love having people on here that can talk better, more good about the things that I cannot.
Better, more good.
More good about the things that I have no idea. I'm sitting there like, I don't know, 3 out of 4. I didn't really understand. They were like actually really good. You just watched like Bullet Train 4 times a week. Great movie also. But yeah, so thank you for coming on. Thanks for guys for watching. If you watched all the way through, or just parts of it, leave comments down below with questions, obviously likes and all that fun stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. We got some fun stuff coming up. Keep watching the Instagram and everything like that. And this is officially the end of all of the Barbenheimer stuff, at least on the channel, but not in our hearts. It's always going to be in our hearts.
Hopefully it'll be conversations years on.
That's true. Yeah, not the end conversationally of the Barbenheimer stuff. Yeah, these are gonna give conversations well beyond this. So, but yeah, and as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low. Movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.